now, what I would want to introduce you is we are partners with Private Financials, and they have opportunities. If you have private insurance, you have all these opportunities for things. And so we have two fabulous ladies here today. I'm going to ask them to come forward, just say a word, and we're going to pray over wiring. Push the right buttons.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Emanuelson, and I've been with Driver for 18 years.
Somewhere.
It's right here. Over those 18 years, and I'm blessed to be back in this congregation again. Today, we are putting forth what we call an action team. Private members have the opportunity to have an action team, whatever their passion is. And when we met, and Rachel and I met, and decided that the nursing home was going to be the recipient of our action team today. And so we will be putting together packets for them and blessing them with them. And so one of the reasons that we're here today is just to talk to you.
They all flicker, but nothing happens on the TV.
And Rachel's really been helping with that.
The monitors in the
Also for
booth are all
myself,
doing
about action teams and choice
my
dollars. So if you have questions, feel free to come and visit with us. And we're excited as we're able to bless the community
everything.
with these gifts today.
Hi, my name is Rachel Mangum. I am a financial advisor with Private Financial. I am convenient.
But I just had Mark.
I am relatively new to Private. I am happy to be here today, and I'm actually happy to see a lot of faces in the crowd in person and not virtually. So I just want to let you know I am available for anybody who has questions about what an action team is, how you can utilize an action team. If you're having trouble logging on to your web portal or member of Private, and also directing choice dollars. Now, if any of that sounds foreign to you, I'd love to have a conversation about it. That as well. We are a full financial services firm, and we are not for profit. We are an organization of Christians. So what happened here? Christians. So what those of you that are here with you all today. So I am happy to be here, and I'm excited to see everybody that is involved in all through this process as well. So thank you all for allowing me to be here today.
Because those are safe.
So later on in the service, we're going to actually be putting together, we're doing the project. We have all these opportunities, especially if you have private insurance. There is, what we found is there's something, there are fraternal organizations that will put money back into the community. And out of all the people we have, which is quite a few, we don't know all their names or any of that, but at the same time, we know there's a bunch of people. And out of all the people with choice dollars, only 2 have used them so far this year. The deadline's coming up at the end of March. And that's just like money, it doesn't come out of your town, it's just money that we can put into the church or the school. And so that's happening. And so talk to them about that. And then these private action cards allow us so many things. Like we get one for every project that we do. We have a former thriving guy right here too as well. So we've got all kinds of opportunities. And so as we do this, today Annette's going to lead us through. We are going to really be interesting because we cannot get any of this to come up. For some unknown reason, our normal Jai is at a wedding at the moment. Well, he's not in the wedding at this moment. He was there last night up in Georgia. And so he's not here, and we can't seem to get this going. We've got our best minds working on it. So it may happen, it may not. But if now, at this point, we're going to call the group up. We're going to do our best. You can sing along on the choruses and do your best on that. Some of the choruses are really repetitive anyway, so that would work. So at this time, we don't do any handshakes right now, no hugs, but if you want to do a holy wave, let's just stand up, greet each other, do a nod. Here's the thing, smile. Smile at people. There's not a lot of smiling happening right now, so smile. the opening song. The chorus goes like this: lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. All who are broken, lift up your heads. All right. So come as you are. There's a part, once we get through the chorus the first time, everybody does this one. It's got kind of an Irish theme, and you go, hey! We don't even have to have that on the screen. You can remember that much. I have no memory whatsoever, but I can remember that much. Let's try it on 3. 1, 2, 3. Hey! Hey! All right. And it really helps. It comes out better if you raise your arm when you do it. Hey! All right. If you do 2 arms, it's too loud. But 1 arm. I'm just kidding. Whatever. 2 arms. He's our rescuer. He's our rescuer. Oh, how sweet the sound. Oh, how sweet the sound. We'll bring our rescuer. There is good news for the captive. Good news for the shame. There is good news for the one who walks away. There is good news for the doubted. Lord, we lift in prayer. For the good Lord has come to seek and save. Get ready. He's our rescuer. Hey! He's our rescuer. Hey! Lord, we will sing forevermore. Oh, how sweet the sound. Hey! Oh, how peace abound. Hey! You will bring the Lord our rescuer. He's sweet for the blind man, riches for the poor. He's searching for the one the world ignores. He's passion for the weary, rest to those who strive. For the Lord is the way to life. Yes, the Lord is the way to life. He's our rescuer. Hey! He's our rescuer. Hey! You know we don't sing forevermore. Oh, how sweet the sound. Hey! Oh, how grace abound. Hey! You know grace our rescuer. Come and be changeless. Come and be fearless. Come to the foot of Calvary. There is redemption for every affliction. Here at the foot of Calvary. Come and be changeless. Come and be fearless. Come to the foot of Calvary. There is redemption for every affliction. Here at the foot of Calvary. He's our rescuer. Hey! He's our rescuer. Hey! Lord, we'll come sing forevermore. Oh, how sweet the sound. Hey! Oh, how grace abound. Hey! We will praise the Lord our rescuer. We'll praise the Lord our rescuer. Here's what you can do. You can have a seat. All right. Can you unmute the over-the-ear mic, please? All right, you gotta give me just a second, all right? We gotta get this on and get it started.
While he's doing that, I have activities for the kids to do during the sermon time. I have some handouts back here, and I also have, we are going to be talking talking about serving one another, and I have packets for each of the kids to make one of these feet like this, and it has directions on it. And when you come back, you need to grab a packet and a glue stick, all right? And the directions are laid out, and there's already crayons at your table, so you should be able to do it. And then there's a couple other sheets as well.
All right, see if I can get pretty. Well, that's not working. All right, well, it looks like me. Maybe we can get it to not look like me. I'll get it at a distance. All right, so welcome to those who are on Facebook Live and those who are not here today. And for whatever reason, are you either traveling or you've got systems that we felt like you can't really be in person. We want to just be able to reach out to everyone, either those that are here or those who are also elsewhere. And so we're going to do the message this way. We're having fun here this morning because the screens won't work. So that has made, already Annette told me, keep your sermons short because we got things to do. And so I'm going to try to do a shortened version. And with no notes, it may be really short today. But we are glad to have you all here today. So I'm going to ignore you. I'm not really ignoring you, but you can welcome to join in. But we're going to talk. My biggest problem is I wander, so I'm going to try to my best stay within the screen. Okay, there we go. So we are talking about. Oh yeah, there's nothing there. We're talking about this red letter challenge, and we've been talking about different themes. And just real quick, I'll do the themes that we've covered so far. We talked about being, which means, just finding our being, finding our time, our rest in Christ. So that's part of it. And then last week we talked about forgiveness, that if we are going to be forgiving people, if that's what we are going to be, first of all, we need to understand we are forgiven. We are those who that Christ has come, and through his death, his resurrection, he gives us forgiveness. And so that empowers us, first of all, to forgive ourselves for our biggest mess-ups and our screw-ups and everything else along that line, but also to be able to forgive others. And that's what we've been doing in the Red Letter Challenge this week. Each of the devotions have dug into that. Now, this week, we are talking about this theme of serving and serving. So if you're following along, I'll do my best. This is the third time, so by now I should be able to do that without notes on a screen, or I forgot my notes back there. So it is what it is. So we're talking about, now serving, first of all, seems strange in the ears of a culture that is all about consuming. I mean, you get that. We are a consumer culture. And so any talk about serving seems like a contradiction to a consuming culture. I know that's the fill-in somehow in there. And so the reality is we're all about that. We like to be served. I have a particular heart because I like to go to restaurants. I don't go fast food. I like to go to restaurants. I like to sit down and I like to be served. And I think, without exception, I treat those who serve me at restaurants well, and I appreciate them for what they do, which is not always easy with people like me and other people I see. And so I very much appreciate them. And so I like to be served. But then sometimes we can get into that entire mode. In fact, one book I've been reading by John Mark Comer really talks about that in America that we have really bowed down. And he quotes this sociologist. Again, it's always interesting when people on the outside of the faith see the same thing that we do from the inside of the faith. And he said, that used to be that we had all this time and we bowed down before the altar of religion, and that was his kind of words. But nowadays, we kind of bow down, and Amazon has become our God, and double-clicking our liturgy, and our Visa bill is our way of worship, and all of these things, and that's become a part of who we are. It's what we even see in a moment, in a time like this, where people are buying pallets of toilet paper and hand sanitizer, far beyond. They have enough to go for the next 3 years. I don't know if they think this virus is never going away or what, but it's part of a consuming culture, and it even spills over into the church. Now, in our culture, a lot of that has changed in the last 100 years. You go back 100 years where we were primarily an agriculture type, and I had time in rural Arkansas for a while, and I will tell you, those farmers, they didn't go every year man, I wonder what the new model of combine is. I'm going to buy me a new combine. You know, like, oh man, this other one's like a year old. No, they figured out how to fix it year after year. They kept their equipment going. And they lived in a land where you grew your stuff. And you bartered for stuff. And you did all these things. But somewhere along World War I, World War II, we shifted in our economy to being a culture where we are all about consuming, buying product. That's why we feel like, oh my goodness, my iPhone, there's a new version. I gotta go out and get it. I gotta do this. It's a part of who we are. And it spills out even into the church at times. Go back 100 years and I can guarantee you, you'll never find an article on church shoppers. Right? Church shopping. It's become part of the vocabulary. Every church knows of its existence. I gotta be honest, I've never been church shopping for an awful long time because I don't really get that, you know, I don't get much of a choice. Hey, come be our pastor. Well, can I pick where I want to worship on Sunday? It doesn't work that way. But I mean, I get it. I get it that if I were to move into an area, I would go around and I would check out the various churches. I would see who they are, what is it they believe, what are they doing? Are they doing something in the community? Do they really believe what this Jesus said? And do they follow it? Do they love each other? Do they love people? Do they love to have guests? Do they love, is it a place I can serve? Is it a place I can grow? I get all that. But the term itself is something that has happened in a consumer-driven culture. All right? So as we do that, then we turn to Jesus. Okay? And this is where my notes, or I wish I could get that straight. I may have to go get them so I can I see the blank? Because if I think you can see the blank, I know I can fill it in. I'm back. Okay, here we go. All right, so Jesus shows us the full extent of his love. That's 2. Thank you. And I'm going to read these passages. Normally I would have everybody read them along with me, but I'm going to read them. It says that just before Passover festival, Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Now that's the translation. Now this is the new NIV, or the ESV has basically the same. And I will tell you that literally, if you just translate the Greek into English, that's a correct translation. It's telos. It means in. But that's not. See, in the old NIV, the 84 version of the NIV, they used this translation. He showed us the full extent of his love. And I love that translation. Because goal isn't like an ending point. It's not just like a point of time that I'm trying to do something and then there's this ending point. That's not the goal. It really has to do with where is God going? Where is God leading? Where is God taking us? And so when Jesus says, I'm going to show you my telos, I'm going to love you to the telos, he's saying, I'm going to love you to the full extent of love. And I'm going to show that. And in fact, this idea of the full extent doesn't end when we get past the story of Jesus washing the disciples' feet. This telos takes you right on through into, that's John 7:13. It takes you into John 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. It just carries through. It takes us all the way through Holy Week and to the resurrection. That's the full extent he is showing. But he starts with a basin and a towel. And so visually, today, I just brought this along because I just want us to be able to see. And I want you to think about this. It says that he took water and he poured it into a basin. And he took a towel and wrapped it around himself and he began to wash feet. Are you nervous? I'm not going to ask you to take your shoes off. I'm not washing anybody's feet, in case you're wondering. All right, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. But I want us to think and get into that mindset. he began to show the full extent of his love by washing his disciples' feet. And then if you'll remember that story, what happens? He starts to do it, and he gets to Peter, right? And he gets to Peter, and Peter basically says, and I don't have the full translation in front of me, this is the problem when I'm trying to do this on the screen, but Peter says, in my paraphrase, ain't no way you are going to wash my feet. No way, no how, no way, no how. And Jesus has to pause and go, Peter, unless you get this, unless you get it. Because Peter's objecting and he's saying, and this is absolutely true, this is unheard of. No rabbi would gather his disciples together and wash their feet. That was unheard of. Washing feet, that is the job of the lowliest servant. The lowliest servant. And Jesus is up and taking the place of the lowliest servant. And so he's saying, this is unheard of, Jesus. No way, no how are you washing my feet. And Jesus says to Peter, and I'm paraphrasing again, then you don't get me. Then you don't get me. Which is all loaded in our language, in our phrase, and our idioms. You don't get me. And he doesn't. And he's telling him, you don't understand what I've come to do, Peter. This is exactly what I came to do. He could have said, remember, wasn't that long ago? Wasn't long ago when I told you the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for all? Can you remember? I mean, what triggers this whole incident is Jesus in his own way is doing like a children's message. Because once again, if you go to Luke's gospel, you see that right before this takes place, they're arguing. And you know what they're doing? They're arguing. They're playing this game of who's greater. Who's better? Who's greater? Who's stronger? Who's wiser? Who's smarter? Who should be top bill among all of Jesus' disciples? And he's done it before, and he's had to stop it before. Remember, there's the one point in time where he takes a little child, stands them in their midst, and says, unless you become like a little child, you can't enter into the kingdom. And there's all this going on. And so Jesus is literally taking towel and basin and water and showing them what it is to show love, what it is to serve. As you get this idea, and he ultimately does it. He starts with a towel and a basin, but this is why I'm telling you, this full extent goes past John 13. Because ultimately he shows it with a cross. There's this passage out of Philippians chapter 2 that says, and literally most scholars believe that this was one of the most ancient hymns of the church. Maybe the first hymn of the Christian church. But it's got these words. Jesus, who being in the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used in his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. See, that's this journey. That's where he takes us. That's where it leads us. He's showing us the full extent of his love. And that gets us to our third and final point. See, serving is putting Jesus' love into action. It's putting his love into action. You and I both know, we know that if you get into a marriage and you say you love somebody but you never show it, they know it. If you have children, if you have friends, and you say the words but never show it, people know it. They know there's a connection between saying love and showing love. And so what Jesus is saying, in Philippians 2, he says it this way, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset of Jesus. And he says it in John 13, now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. And so that's what our project is today. You know, we got all this, but we're going to have foot washing stations. You're nervous now. You're not sure. Is he mean it? There are churches that do that, by the way. We're not doing that in coronavirus land. No, we're not doing that. No.
Well, we're about to put packets together in a minute, but it's all interconnected. What is Jesus saying? He's saying, look, don't just say love me, show it. And don't just show me your love. Show it to the world. Show it to the world. The last fill-ins here, it says this. It's one thing to say it and another to show it. One thing to say it, another to show it. Way back, as we're in isolation. What is it? Social distancing. I love terms. Social, as we socially distance ourselves, as if we weren't already, as we do it more in these coming weeks. Maybe you're going to pick up a book. Maybe you're going to read something. I love the meme. I had to repost it, even though I'm not a sports watcher. I love this one. This is hilarious. It says, it's third day without sports. I've discovered some woman in my house. She says she's my wife. She seems nice. My prayer is that there's good things that always come out of even the horrible things. And I really do pray that maybe we'll discover each other again a little more. And maybe, I know, as long as there's internet, there'll always be your phone. There'll always be your cable or whatever it is that you do. Maybe, just maybe, we'll spend a little quality time together with friends. Okay, 6 feet apart. Maybe shouting from house to house. I don't know. Maybe we'll reconnect. But here's the thing. There's a book by John Ortberg I read a number of years ago, and I still remember big chunks of that book, which always says something, because I read a lot of books. And he tells the story that in the early decades, in the early centuries of the church, when they still were being questioned all the time, plagues came upon Rome and the regions around Rome. And most of the people were doing, they didn't have a term like social distancing at that time. They were just doing it. Like they were getting up, packing out, or they were throwing people that were infected out into the streets to die. Everybody but the Christians. The Christians felt compelled to care for the people, oftentimes at the cost of their own health, many times at the cost of their own life. And it left an impact, an impression, an indelible impression on the people around. We have the inevitable question of what? Why? Why would you do that? Why are you acting differently than all the others? And they said, well, you see, we follow this guy who came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom. We follow this Savior who came and didn't bypass the lepers, but touched them. Who touched the sick. Went to all people. And you see, that was how the church spread. Not just by speaking a word, but by living a word. Now, if you think my build-up to this is now go out and kiss somebody with coronavirus in the mouth, it's not. If you've got my devotion that I wrote on Friday, I included these powerful words from Martin Luther King, who lived through plagues. And he talks and he gives, to me, with such wise advice. He says, look, God has this in so many words. I'm going to fumigate, I'm going to be smart, I'm going to do things that are intelligent, but I am not going to abandon my neighbor. I'm not going to just let this take over my life. I know it's my paraphrase. You can look at my devotion if you want the entire quote. But here's what I'm asking. In a moment, and that's going to come up and explain what we're going to do in a very physical way. By the way, today, offering, instead of handing basket from hand to hand to hand, we're just going to have it at the end of the service in the back. Okay, and you can drop that off, and we appreciate it because we, like every other organization, are going to be in tight times when you drop off a lot of your people that are coming. But anyway, so here's one thing, and I ask you to do on that yellow sheet. There are people in our congregation, I'm going to use two by name, Ron and Lou, because I don't think they would care if I did this. Lou just came through heart surgery. Thankfully, she got out of Shams and is back home, and they are going to be in isolation for the next several weeks, as they should be. That's just plain wise. Coronavirus or not, she should have been in isolation for a while. There's enough other stuff going around. But here's the thing. At least she has Ron in the house with her. We've got several other older members who have compromised, and even some younger members who have compromised immune systems, who don't have anybody else in the house. What are we going to do about it? We would love some people that will, on their yellow sheet, say, you know what, I'll make some phone calls on people. I'll join in with the elders and make some phone calls, and we'll check up on people that are staying at home and are staying indoors. And here's the rest, and maybe those that are a little bit braver, or a little more available, or you feel like you can do this. At some point, if this thing carries on into weeks, there's going to be a time when they're going to need something. I'm just using them for example. We got other people. Maybe they need some, somebody to run to the store and get something and leave it on their porch. If you're willing to do something like that, write it on the yellow sheet. We're going to serve our neighbors. We're going to serve those in our community that may be most vulnerable right now. It'll be a way of us just saying, we're not going to be trapped by this. We're going to do sensible things. We're going to take precautions, but we're going to love one another. We're going to serve. And so we have those opportunities at this place all the time. You know full well that we are a congregation that we keep upping the bar on how much we serve in this community. And it only works because you're willing to do that. And we have opportunities. And so today we thought, with a theme like serving, we wanted to do something just really practical. And so I'm going to have Annette come forward, and I'm going to give her a microphone, and she's going to explain that. For you, I'm glad you tuned in. Have an awesome day. We're praying for our community, and thanks, and be safe.
All right, so we're going to be doing some things for Camelot, which is right next door. It's an assisted living place. And I talked to the activities director there, and I asked what we could do. And one of the things that she said that they could use is hygiene bags. So what I have right here is, there's going to be different stations so you can do different things, okay? For instance, this is a station that you can do. I have 80 quart-sized bags out here. You go through the line and you put one of the items of each thing in the basket in this box, all right? That's all you need to do, and close it up and make sure like the air's out of it and such like that. And then over here, at this station right here, is we thought we'd like to put the quart bags inside a white bag like this to make it like a gift bag. So I've asked people, I have crayons and stuff over there and stickers and words that you can write on the bag. That there's all examples there. And we thought we'd make gift bags, and I have 80 bags there. All right? That's two things that you can do. Over at the table over here to Jeff's right is cards that have, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. And then what we're going to do is take a piece of Dove candy, which is over there, and we're going to take that right on the heart. So when you get all those done, you'll finish that project. The last thing that I have is over here. I ran across this organization called Bill's Friends, and they have they minister to cancer patients, and they have these cards that we can make. The rules are that you have to color them with crayon and write a little note. And on this, I have ideas of what you can write on your little note. So because, they say, please do not say things like, get well soon or feel better, because the reality is, they may not, all right? But there's all of these other things that you can write, like, you are strong, you are brave, those kinds of things. And then you also put your first name, all right? The directions are right here. You put your first name and your age, okay? And then we're going to send all of those out. My Mission Possible kids have been working on those
thank Thrive-It because it is Thrive-It Action Card that we use to buy all the items for today. And so we do want to thank them for that as well.
All right, so people can get up and move, do different things at each of the tables.
What we're going to do is a praise group's going to come forward and we're going to sing a couple songs during that time. And like some musical accompaniment is what you're doing. All right. In fact, the first song is a song I wrote a number of years ago about towel and space. Thank you. Sorry, I forgot to do that. Good on you.
He's cutting that, he's feeling that, I'm drinking really long. We'll have to stay in that kind of day, never face the past that is gone. There's a man who walks up to him, who wants to press on the other line. He doesn't know what he thinks just so wrong. What it takes at the tower and the faces to put his heart in those that he's not enough. So it takes up the tower and the faces, and he goes into motion, Jesus love. It's just the meal we share, it's just the way we care, it's just the wonder and giants. It's just a group that prays, it's just a play of things, it's just the words going on in life. We don't know it, but we're here together, be his hands and feet. That's what the body of Christ is meant to do. To take up the tower and the faces, 'cause in our hearts we know that here is
Stop. Not on Rachel. Well, she said yes. And I took one of Avery's. I'm going to post it right here.
The shame was in you.
What we're going to do is you can continue to work, but I'm just going to offer up a prayer, and we're going to join in the Lord's Prayer, and then we're going to close with a closing song. It's a good one to close on because I know a lot of you actually know it. Let's pray. Lord, as we gather here today, and as these projects continue to be done, let them be done truly in love for you and in love for one another. We don't serve in order to get some kind of merit badge so that we get enough, we get to go and be with you. We serve because you have so served us, so loved us. We can't help but want to love each other and put that love into action. Today we pray for our leaders. We pray for our medical communities. We pray for our nation. We pray for our economy. And with all these things, it just kind of trickles down in so many ways. As corporations are missing out and events are canceled, it is an impact on so many people. As small businesses strive to continue to move forward, it is a struggle for them. And we pray that as this wave goes through, that we would keep it from becoming that which totally paralyzes us, but instead that we would use wisdom and that we would care about one another. That we get out of this mindset of me and me and see how we might serve. Be with those that are struggling health-wise. We're thankful that they're heeding the advice and staying away from large public gatherings. And we pray for their continued healing. Be with Lou, and we're so thankful to have her home. Be with those that will gather this afternoon at 3 o'clock for John Inman's memorial service, a dear brother of ours. And as we celebrate his life, we know whose he is and now where he is. We are also going to just take time to remember and to praise you for the ways his life impacted ours. We pray these things and all things, Lord. In the name of the one who has taught us to pray as one family, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And while they're finishing up these different projects, thank you all those that participated. Thank you to Bribant for providing that. Thank you for being here today. We're going to stand up and we're going to sing this song, My Lighthouse, which is one the kids know well. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness. I will follow you. You